Welcome to the Skirted Professional Podcast, a place where women of all different walks of life come together to share their journeys and wisdom they've learned along the way. We are so excited that you're part of this community. We hope you always leave this space feeling encouraged, inspired, and a little less alone. The Skirted Professional is brought to you by C Saucy, a medical apparel company that specializes in modern scrub skirt sets for the working woman. Their goal is to give every woman the option to wear a skirt in their workplace without compromising the comfort, style, or functionality of their scrubs. You can check them out at csaucy.com. That's CSAUCY.com. All right, without further ado, let's get to today's episode. Hi, Datha. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Ellery. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here with me. Can you start off by just telling our listeners who you are and what your life currently looks like?
Well, I'm Datha, and I am currently running an insurance technology company that I co-founded with two other founders at the end of 2020. It's called Steadily, and it focuses on providing insurance for landlords and real estate investors online. And my husband and I are also the student pastors at the Life Church of Kansas City, and we've been doing that for going on 7 years. I have two little ones. I have a little 3-year-old named Vienna, and I have a 10-month-old named Zara.
Awesome. Very cool. So you are very involved in kind of all the facets of life with ministry and family and even starting your own company. What has your educational path looked like or career path looked like to get where you are?
Everyone who ends up in insurance, most people say that they never intended to be here in the first place. It's not like they ever planned to. I'm one of those people. I was a political science major. I actually went to Indiana Bible College for 2 years, and that was I consider that pre-undergrad because I kind of started over from scratch afterwards, and I'd always intended to get my secular degree as well. I spent a year and a half abroad in my undergrad just because I'm a missionary kid, and I was like, why not? Let's explore the world. Let's see what we can. So I did my first year of undergrad in London, and then I did 6 months in Cairo, Egypt, and then I moved to Tampa and finished out my degree at the University of Tampa. And that was right around 2007 during one of the financial crises. And there really weren't many jobs to be had. And so I was considering moving, being a political science major. I kind of thought I would work for the State Department. Maybe I wanted to be an ambassador someday. And so I was thinking about moving to Washington, D.C., but I was helping out a church at the time, and I just really felt drawn to stay there and to help them. And so I ended up getting hired into a management leadership program for Geico, which had a massive office there in Florida. And that was the start of my career in insurance. I was with them for 2.5 years, and ultimately ended up leaving after I finished the management training program. I got recruited by another international brokerage house called Brown and Brown, and they asked me if I would move up to New Jersey. And my husband and I were on again, off again dating at the time. And we were actually off again at the time. And it turned out that he lived in New Jersey, and I didn't seek it out. This was a Florida company, and they called me and said, "Will you move to New Jersey?" And I was like, "Well, I guess." So, so I moved up to New Jersey, and a few months later, we were on again and got engaged. And I spent 10 years with that company, kind of working my way up. And most recently, before I left to join Steadily, I was the director of strategic projects and the project management office for the division. So I was leading multi-million-dollar projects, and they ultimately asked if we would relocate to Kansas City. That was 7 years ago this month. And so we prayed about it, and Nathan felt it was the right thing to do. So a little bit unique in that he was willing to relocate for my job. A lot of times it goes the other way, but we picked up and moved to Kansas City, and have been so happy ever since. Became youth pastors shortly thereafter, and we absolutely love it. We still love it. Are so glad we're here.
Wow. That is so cool to hear how different times in your career journey God has placed you through your job where He needed you to be, whether it was for you and your husband or for you and him to end up in Kansas City, and how He's kind of orchestrated through your career your lives together.
Yeah, for sure. It's I've just found that when you pursue God and you pursue the things of God, everything else falls into place, and you can look back over your life and you can look at those points of decision, and you actually see God's hand that was leading you and guiding you the whole time, even though, a lot of it would have been, it was scary. It was scary to move out here to Kansas City without a ministry opportunity necessarily. And never in our wildest dreams would we have imagined that there was a ministry opportunity that was already materializing before we even moved here.
Wow, incredible. I'm curious, as you're talking, was ministry always kind of the end goal for you guys, or is that something that you've always known that you wanted to be involved in?
I think Nathan and I have always, we both grew up in ministers' homes, and we've always been very, very passionate about ministry. But we've also both been very passionate about our careers. And so we've always kind of known that it was always going to be a bivocational thing for us, and that we were always going to pursue it. And so, in many ways, our careers really enable our ministries and allow us to do the things that we want to do without needing to be full time at a church. We can come in and assist and help because we have our careers, and our incomes from that regard. But we're both very passionate about ministry. It's our heartbeat. It's what we've been doing the whole time we've been married. So
Wow. I love what you said, that your careers have enabled your ministries, and to some degree, not to sound self centered, but what a gift when you are able to move into a church and be self sufficient and then also be helping hands and just come to assist and not have to come right on staff or be given a full-time salary. What a gift to those churches. I know that's not the path for everyone, but I think that's incredible that you've been able to serve the churches that you've been in that way.
we're very thankful. And we're thankful for the opportunity to serve too. We count it a privilege.
Yeah. So I know you have two girls now. Can you tell me a little bit about your transition into motherhood? Because I think you guys were in Kansas City, right, before you had your first. So
Hmm.
being youth pastors and then, becoming a mother, and both of you and your husband working, what has that whole transition looked like?
Um, I'll say that we certainly have a lot of balls in the air, without a
Sure.
doubt. Um, with my first, I think it was less intense than it has been with my second.
Okay.
Um, the second is certainly easier from the perspective of you know what to do as a parent, but just where I was career wise at the time that I had Vienna, I had the flexibility to take some time off and just gradually ease back into things. With Zara, I found out I was pregnant with her. I was 2 or 3 months pregnant with her before the opportunity came up to co-found Steadily.
Wow.
And so when my co-founder reached out to me, and I had an inkling that he was about to ask me,
Yeah.
and I was a little bit nervous because I am not a startup person.
Right.
I'm fairly risk averse, and I was happily climbing the corporate ladder at my company and still had plenty of upward trajectory. And so I had told my husband, I was like, I think he's going to ask me to co-found with him. And he's like, well, what are you going to say? I'm like, I don't know. That's really scary. Like, I don't really take risks like that.
Sure.
Um, but so when he asked, I said, I have to tell you something. We haven't even shared with our families yet that I'm pregnant. Maybe we should wait until
Mhm.
after the baby's born, and then we should start the company. And he's like, no, we need to do it now. We need to strike while the iron's hot. So I'm like, okay, here we go. And I was also in the middle of a flip. We had bought a very large house, a 7,000 square foot house, and we were on the tail end of finishing up. So I was spending every weekend of my first trimester building cabinets at
Wow.
this flip house, and then we started this new company. So it was wild, to say
Yeah.
the least. Um, but what I've kind of learned through it is number one, Nathan is everything. I could not do it without him. We went into marriage and we went into parenthood understanding that this was a partnership. This was never something that I was just going to do on my own. So I can tell you, he probably changes more diapers than I do
Mhm.
in the history of raising our kids. Um, he puts dinner on the table every night, pretty much. If it were up to me, we would probably be living on Totina's pizza rolls and strawberries. Because when I come home at the end of the night, you know, like my brain is completely fried, and he'll say, "What do you want for dinner?" I'm like, "I don't even care. Just feed me something. I don't want to make any more decisions today."
You on a plate.
And yeah, yeah, he is has been willing and able to step into that because he knows that the role that I'm in is fairly high stress, and so thank God too that his job is a little bit less stressed, and
Mhm.
it allows him to take time off and, you know, run to the grocery store at lunchtime if he needs to. And so I really think having a partner who is completely supportive of the endeavor and who is my partner in every way has been critical in that transition. Um, I'm also normalizing having my baby on meetings during those first few
Mhm.
months. You know, if somebody wanted to talk to me, there was a pretty good chance that I'd turn my camera up and I'd be nursing my baby while I was on the call. And if she cried a little bit, it was like, well, if you want to talk to me, I have a newborn baby, so you kind of have to take it or leave it. And it's been the same way at conferences, just kind of learning how to navigate that being an executive with also being a mom and providing for my girls and carrying all my paraphernalia with me back and forth to conferences and events and things like that. And I'm proud of it. I want other women to know that they can do this,
Mhm.
that they can still be a mom, that they can still do all the things they want to for their kids and still pursue their careers at the same time.
Yeah, how beautiful of a picture you're already painting, even for the two little women in your life, just to have them with you and watching you and seeing the way that you are able to navigate this motherhood season and career season. And I love that piece about not being ashamed of it. You're proud to have both sides. And I think we tend to lean one way or the other, put my kids to the back burner because I really need to focus on my career or, put the career aside just to focus on my kids. And there's no shame in either, but there's also no shame in being able to do both at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. And things drop without a doubt.
Sure.
My co-founder, he kept encouraging me saying, "Well, you need to offload whatever you can. You need to outsource whatever you can." I'm like, "But you know, I don't want to spend money on a house cleaner. Like, you know, what kind of woman can't keep their own house clean? Me. I cannot keep my own house clean, and I love a clean house. I love pretty decoration, but I've got to tell you, if you show up at my house without announcing, um, there's going to be toys strewn all over my house. There's going to be clutter in the kitchen, and so I got to the point where I hired somebody to come help me clean my house once a week because I've learned to be very, very protective of the free time that I have and making sure that everything I'm doing with my free time is really adding value to our lives and to our family. And so, you know, thankfully we were in a position where we could do that. And I have somebody come in once a week. And that way I don't have to spend my Saturday mornings cleaning house. I can spend Saturday mornings snuggling in bed with my girls and we can go out and just have a fun family day. Um, Sometimes I bribe my niece to come help me fold laundry because it gets on top of me. And if you walk in my closet right now, there's literally four big baskets of clean clothes. They're all clean. They just never get put away. And I've had to let go of the things that I know I just can't get my arms around and realize that in the grander scheme of things, they just don't matter all that much. It's
Sure.
okay. And you give up things too. It's not like there isn't a trade-off. I was an avid DIYer. I loved to DIY things. And so now I look at everything and I'm like, well, how much is my time worth? That
Mm.
is not worth my time. And so there's things that I don't do anymore. Um, but I feel like it's worth it because my career and my family are fun and fulfilling, and if I have to trade off some DIY, it's not the end of the world.
Sure. I love what you're saying because it's kind of unraveling social, societal expectations of what women should be doing right now, and more looking at it from a practical standpoint of what works for me, what works for my husband, what works for our kids, my job, his job, what they need in this season of life. It doesn't mean that I can't pick up DIY, 5, 10 years from now if I get a chance to, but what works in this season, and not having such a permanent, static idea of what I have to get done in a day.
Mhm.
I'm kind of the same in a couple ways. Number one, the first is I always have clean laundry in my house. In fact, I have clean laundry in my house right now. It's folded, but it's not put away. So I'm with you. Um, but at the same time, having to learn to accept help, and some of the ways that I would normally love to have my act together. Maybe it's the house, maybe it's, some other aspect, but being able to say that's not quite as important as maybe sitting on the floor and playing the same game I've played 1,000 times with my kid because it matters to him and it's important right now. So I love that unraveling of just expectations to make room for what is really important and adds value, as you put it.
Yeah, for sure. I laughed too when you said that about accepting help because I feel like so many of my friends that I talk to would be horrified, if their mother-in-law came over and offered to help clean.
Sure.
I'm like, "Yes, thank you. That would be amazing." She comes to visit. She's like, "Well, can I do anything?" I'm like, "Well, the pantry needs organized. Sure." I'm like, "I would love your help."
Absolutely.
I am not ashamed to ask for help or accept it if it's offered.
Sure. Well, I mean, when you look at history, and I could get off on a tangent, but babies were almost always raised in community, and we don't always have that luxury in today's world, and so we try to do all of it, and some of us have no other choice. That's, where we are in life right now, is we don't have that help. But how amazing to accept that community and have, I think that's one thing I've learned with my son, because he tends to be a little more on the shy side, that when I have someone offer and he loves them, it is such a good thing for both me and for him to have other experiences besides just being with me all the time. And so that's been a lesson for me recently, is just to accept that help, when it's offered.
Yeah, for sure.
It sounds like in the way that you talk about both your husband and maybe your co-founder too, that they're very mutual partnerships, and being able to maybe have um, conversations and dialogue about what's working, what's not, what needs to change. Would you say that's true in both of those relationships?
Yeah, I would say that's very much true. I approach both. We go into it as equal partners, and we both have, speaking of both relationships, both parties have those things that they're really good at. And so we focus on the areas that are good. And so again, it may be atypical that I have, that my husband is the one who does all the cooking, but he enjoys it. He likes to cook. He loves to, you know, put a fancy dinner on the table, and he's delighted when I come home, and I love it. And by the same token, all of the tools in the garage, they belong to me. My Mother's Day gift was a table saw because that is what I enjoy. Um, and it's the same with, my co-founders. There are areas that are my domain, and they are left to my full discretion. And then there's other areas that are his domain, and I leave those to his discretion and kind of defer to his or their, I have two co-founders, to their decision making. And I think that served me pretty well throughout my life. I read a book very early on that talked about strengths-based leadership and learning how to figure out the elements of your own character and your own personality and how that translates into your leadership style, and stop trying to be somebody that you're not as a leader. Stop trying to exhibit traits that you don't naturally possess. And of course, there's an element of developing and, maybe learning some skills that you didn't have, but inherently we are who we are. And so figuring out how to surround yourself with people who are good at the things that you're not as good at. And that way their skills can accentuate or supplement your own leadership versus you trying to twist yourself into a round hole if you're a square peg, that it just isn't you. And so I've kind of embraced that throughout my career in leadership, both in ministry and not, is just, this is who I am. And these are the things I'm good at, and this is what I'm going to do really well at. And if there are things I'm not as good at, I'm going to try to find people who can help me in those areas and who are better at those things than I am. That's not intimidating to me. That makes for a really powerful team or a really powerful couple.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I'm curious, how did you start to hone the things that you were strong at early on in your career, knowing you kind of started in a career that you weren't expecting to, and then you've been in several different areas of just your career of from project management to now you're jumping into entrepreneurship. So how did you start to find those strengths and hone them and follow that path as you went?
Um, I think I have just always focused on the things that I was really interested in. Um, I couldn't have told you. I mean, I do find insurance a little interesting. I'm an insurance nerd now, but it's not that I necessarily pursued insurance, but I found that I really enjoyed operations. I
Mhm.
really love saving money. So I loved getting into a workflow or a problem and figuring out how I could restructure it to save the company time or money.
Mhm.
And so by following those things in my career that I felt like I really enjoyed, um, it wasn't so much about the industry that I was in. It
Sure.
was about the skill sets and the things that I enjoyed about that particular career. And, as I've talked to other young professionals, I would say that one of the main things is consider every opportunity that you're given to be an opportunity to learn and to grow your skill set. If someone asks you to get up in front of a group and give a 2-minute presentation for an invitation to something that you're doing, don't just blow it off like it's no big deal, because that's an opportunity to hone your skills, getting up in front of someone and speaking and presenting. And if you're in a job where somebody is showering extra work on you, like, yeah, there's that balance where you're like, okay, wait, I need to be paid for certain things. You're kind of
Right.
abusing me. But to an extent, if especially if you're trying to acquire skills and you're trying to grow in your career, accept those opportunities. Say, yes, I would happily do that. Is there anything else that I could do? Is there another project that I can jump in for you? Because all of those things are going to stretch you and expand you.
Mhm.
I've always held the perspective that you should do the job that you want before you have the job. So don't feel upset that you don't have the title. Start doing it. Start exhibiting those skills and practicing those things that you're going to need for that next role in your life. And hopefully those things will come to you. I know for me, they always did. I didn't wait to be told. I saw a need. And so I started doing it. Oh, I saw this problem. So I did an analysis, and here's what I think we need to do.
Mhm.
There was one point in my career. So I was with the same company for 10 years, and it was a very, very large company. And I got to the point where I was in a role, I was bored. I just I was good at it, but it wasn't exciting anymore. And I really wanted to do something else. And so I had been interviewing outside of the company, and I got an offer from this company in Manhattan, and it was so cool. Like, I was going to have to fly to China a couple of times a year. Like, it was a lot more money. It was awesome. But I really loved the company I worked for. I just didn't like what I was doing. And so I had enough of a relationship with my leader at the time to go to her and say, I got this other offer. I don't want to go, but I'm bored and I want to do something else. And I had this thought that maybe I could come do for you guys what this other company was going to hire me to do for them. What would that look like? And in 24, maybe 48 hours, they had asked me not to accept the offer. They said, we'll make up a title, you'll write your own job description, we'll give you a 20% raise, just stay and do this thing. And that was really one of the catapults in my career. Was I took that opportunity, and then another opportunity came from that, and so people just started noticing. But I think so much of that is just initiative. If I had just quit and walked away, I wouldn't be here today. But because I went back and said, let me do this, here's what I think you need. You don't even know you need it yet, but you need me to do this, and here's why. And part of that is just blessed by a company that was willing to say yes, a company that was willing to say, don't leave. We'll do whatever we need to do to keep you.
Sure. I love that piece about being an advocate for yourself, and to some degree of maybe you're being underutilized or you see a problem that nobody is solving, and to have that courage to say, I'm a person for this. I can do this. I can do this for you, and the door opened up for you. How cool that you were able to do that. Do you feel like you have had that skill of um, advocating for yourself, or is that something that's grown along the way, grown with you throughout your journey?
I think as you grow in confidence, in your own abilities and your own worth,
Mm-hmm.
um, the ability to advocate for yourself um, increases over time. Um, they always say that people don't leave jobs, they leave their bosses. And I've been privileged to work for really great people who saw my skill, who gave me increasing responsibility, and who often would advocate for me so that I didn't have to do it for myself. But there are times where you've got to step forward and raise your hand and say it's me, and don't be shy about saying I can do this. Give me extra responsibility. But if you have filled yourself and filled your career with all of those little opportunities along the way, you will have over time developed all of those skill sets that will allow you to say in confidence, this is me. Practice conversations. We don't discourage our team here from interviewing elsewhere. We say, go interview and come back and tell us what you're worth today, because if that's what you're worth, we're going to pay you what you're worth to keep you. So there's an element of that as well. And I recognize not all companies are like that. That doesn't work. We are unique in that aspect. Um, but I would say know your worth, and that should give you confidence to step up and advocate for yourself in a respectful and professional way.
Sure. There's an element to a lot of what you're saying that follows kind of that intuition or knowledge about yourself, being able to know, okay, I am qualified in this area, or maybe I just naturally like this area. So I'm going to kind of follow that and try to beef up my skills in this new area and see what follows, but really an awareness about yourself, your skills, and then valuing that, not dismissing it, but being able to say, this is a valuable part of me, and I'm going to pay attention to it and hone it and see where my strengths take me.
And don't be afraid of failure too. It seems like I think everybody knows that, like we say we know it, but sometimes we don't really know it, that you need to learn from your failures. You need to learn from your mess ups. Um, I consider my first management role a complete failure. Um, I was leading a team of 30 something people, and I did not do a great job. And so after a year or so, I ended up transitioning back into an individual contributor role. And it was a few years before I took on the leadership of people again. But the second time around, I was a lot older and a lot wiser. Not a lot older, a little older and a lot wiser, and had taken from that experience and from that failure things that I could learn about it so that I could be much, much better the second time around. So don't be afraid to try things and fail, because somebody who's failed at something is probably the best person to give something to, because they've already learned all the lessons from failing. So be thankful for it. Take the lesson and move forward stronger and better than you were before.
Yeah, absolutely. I I think that's so important to our listeners to know that you can fail and it doesn't diminish your self-worth or how capable you are as a person. So to take it from a learning mindset of, okay, well, what can I do differently? How can I grow my skills in this area that I didn't feel like I did so well at last time around, rather than kind of spiraling into this, well, I just must not be good at this, or it must not be my um, career to have, but really just taking it as a learning experience. And overall, developing yourself as a person throughout your journey, it sounds like, is really what you've learned to do well. How has that translated then coming into ministry with these skills and this awareness that you've grown through your career? How have you been able to bring that into ministry?
Um, I seem to always get tapped on the shoulder for administration related ministry activities,
Yeah.
which is fine. I'm thankful that the skills that I've learned in business, to budget, to plan events, to be structured and be organized, are able to translate into serving the kingdom of God. So that for sure happens. And then just as a leader, we have a very large youth group. Shout out to VSM, they're amazing. But just in dealing with different personalities and challenges, I think so often one of the biggest challenges for a new leader, an inexperienced leader, is dealing with personality conflicts, either with students or with parents of students or other people in the church. And so Nathan and I both, just because we have so much experience dealing with different types of people in the workplace, are able to translate that into people at church and dealing with personalities at church. And sometimes I will stop myself and I'll say, okay, what am I hoping to get out of this? And I'll coach myself, just like I would coach somebody I was mentoring, and say, I can double down on this and push for whatever I think needs to be done, but is it going to result in the desired outcome? Which is, what is the desired outcome? Is it a different behavior? Is it that they would do this and not that? And really, it reframes how I approach things, because I do step back and kind of ask myself, okay, well, what's going to happen if I double down? They will end up not doing what I'm hoping will happen. The outcome will not be what I hope happens, and kind of reshape my approach. So I think the skills around leading people and dealing with people are the same in church, in ministry, as in your career. It's a skill, and it's something that you develop over time as you learn and as you have more experiences. And of course, we still make mistakes. We, can look back and say, well, I could have handled that better. But it helps you go into conversations with more confidence, because you're confident in your own ability to drive the conversation or to steer things the way that you need to. You're confident in your ability to respond on the fly when you don't know what's going to come up. You don't know what somebody's going to say or what somebody's going to ask you. And so just continuously practicing,
Sure.
practicing those skills and using them inside and outside the church.
Sure. Well, it sounds like you have been able to provide room or create room for reflection in almost all the areas of your life, whether it's motherhood, okay, what is serving me right now, or with the ministry, trying to step back and reflect on, okay, how are the dynamics between me and this person working, or what is serving the greater good of the youth group or the church. And so those moments of reflection provide the room for growth and for changing course and for doing it differently and finding a different way to get that outcome that you want. And so I think that piece of just reflection and not being scared of what we find. If we find in ourselves like maybe I'm pushing because this is just something I want or something I'm used to, but it doesn't have to be this way. I'm probably speaking from personal experience there, someone who doesn't like change, but if that's what
I
I
love
find,
change.
if that's what I find, I'm okay with that. I'm okay to say, okay, this is me, so I'm going to change and be flexible there, and it doesn't again diminish your worth or your capability, but it just allows you to grow even more.
Yeah, and I so much of that goes into what I hope I'm transmitting to not only my daughters, but to the students in our youth group is that confidence in yourself and that confidence in who you are. And it's not a cockiness, it's a God-given confidence that this is who I am. This is who God made me be. And I have strengths and I have weaknesses, and I will continue trying to develop my strengths, and I will try to um, do things to make up for weaknesses or find ways to stabilize those weaknesses. But this is who I am. And when you can go into that with confidence, I think that shapes so much of the rest of your life. And so many of the conversations again that I have with our students is I hope that I'm modeling for them how to be a confident woman and how to be confident in what God has called you to do and where God has placed you, and that looks different for every single person, but
Mhm.
that you don't have to be ashamed about what it looks like for you or how you're going about things, because this is who you are. Take it or leave it. This is who I am.
Wow, so good. I want to write down notes. That's a message in and of itself. Just being confident in who you are in God, not necessarily what even your path looks like, because almost all of us end up with paths that we would not have planned for ourselves. But in every circumstance, knowing who you are, knowing your value, because you are His, because He has called you and placed you and given you the gifts that He gave you and the strengths that He gave you for His purpose.
Yeah. I love just because of my own background pursuing my career, I love encouraging and mentoring other women who are trying to find that balance. They're trying to find their own career. And, that's not necessary. I mean, that's not to say that staying at home isn't totally fine. There are some women who that is their passion. That is not mine. I don't want to do that. I wouldn't do that if I could do that,
Right.
because that's just not what I'm passionate about. And so when there's other young women who are trying to figure out how they navigate their professional careers and balance that with family life and ministry, I love sharing. I love mentoring and providing suggestions. My favorite conversations are when people approach me for career advice. Young women approach me for career advice. What should I do? I'm having this problem at work. I'm having this conflict. What would you suggest I would do? And being able to counsel and provide guidance. And again, I don't have all the answers, but I do have a lot of practice in balancing things. So that's one of my favorite parts of impacting other people.
Yeah, I love that. And that was really the reason Chloe and I felt to start this podcast was the very reason that you're saying is everyone has such different paths and they're all Great. If God has placed you on your path and called you with the passion for, staying home with your kids or pursuing your career exclusively or pursuing ministry exclusively, maybe you're in a season of singleness and God has called you and placed you exactly where you are. And all of that is God ordained and given to you with your specific strengths in mind. And so I think anytime that you are confident in the path God has laid for you, it's beautiful. And if he's tugging on your heartstrings, something that you would not have expected, that wasn't the path that you thought that you would be on, and it looks different from the people around you, that's okay. He can use your unique callings and giftings in a way that you haven't seen before. And so I love that
Yeah,
you are able to speak that encouragement
yeah,
into the women around you.
absolutely. And speaking of women who are called to singleness for a certain season, I enjoyed being single. I enjoyed my time being single. I didn't get married until I think I was 26.
Mm,
Um, and I traveled the world and I did things that I wouldn't have been able to do when I was married. And I've always held the opinion, and I've told women that I've talked to, there are worse things than being single. Something worse than being single would be being married to somebody who's not the right fit for you, who's not the helpmeet for you,
right.
because it will impact your entire life and what you can do and how far you can go, how far you can grow in your career, in your ministry, in your walk with God depends so much upon um, the person that you're married to. And so sometimes it may be better to be single and to enjoy that time doing your own thing and being independent and not having anyone to answer to from that regard. You can go off and just take a trip and you don't have to worry. And there was also a period where Nathan and I enjoyed being double income, no kids. We call them dinks. Um, we were married for 4 or 5 years before we had children, and we enjoyed that time together. We enjoyed traveling, and I feel like too that's allowed us to really appreciate our children in a way that we might not have been able to otherwise, because
Mhm.
we had that time together, because we were able to have all of those experiences, that we don't feel resentful against our kids that, oh man, we can't go out. Oh man, we can't just pick up and go on this trip because we've got to figure out the kids, because we did those things already. We had all the fancy restaurants and the fancy trips and the tours across Europe. And then when we had children, I enjoy spending time with them. I enjoy taking them out and doing things that are fun for them. And so I'm thankful that we waited too. So again, societal pressure sometimes can tell you, well, you're married, you need to have kids now. And even family sometimes can pressure you. But if that's not in your heart, it's okay. It's okay to wait and just enjoy the season that God has placed you in, and know that when that season changes, enjoy that one too. I try to be conscious of that too, of we're tempted sometimes to look at our kids as they grow and think, "Oh, I just want you to be a little baby again. I miss the baby stage." But I try not to ever say that, even though for a moment I might think, "Oh, she was so cute. That was so sweet." But I try to live in the now. She's amazing right now for this or for that, and this is the season that we're in. And when she's 8 years old, she'll be amazing doing those things when she's 8 years old. And there'll be things that, yeah, you miss a little bit, but there's also new things. She can do things with you that she never could before. So really living in the season that God has placed you in, and not resenting the season that you're in at this point in your life.
Absolutely. That message really hit to me. I am a mom to a almost 2-year-old and a 2-month-old, so very close in age. But I find myself thinking, oh man, if it could just, if I all my attention could be on my first again, then it would be different. Or if my second could have all the attention that my first got. And sometimes I can get wrapped up in that rather than just enjoying the season we're in, whatever it looks like, however crazy it is sometimes, but enjoying them where they are right now with what I have to give, and knowing that that is our season and this is what
Yeah.
I'm called to. in this season, and God knew what was coming, and He placed me here and knew it would be enough, and knew they would both get what they needed, and um, so that message definitely hits me where I'm at today.
Mom guilt is real. You got to fight it.
And it finds a way to creep in no matter what you're doing. You can do something one way and then do it the opposite way, and you're going to feel guilty for both. And today, if you are not careful and don't guard your heart, and remind yourself to make room for the joy in every moment.
Without a doubt.
Sure. So switching gears a little bit, this is out of my own curiosity, but I have followed your house flip on Instagram as you guys have done it. So could you tell us about that and just, taking on a side project, I'm assuming, how that was for you?
It was stressful. Um, I love home design, so it's a hobby. Like I love home decor and redesigning things, and so we got the idea. We bought our home as a fixer upper, and so it was a home that we had to completely gut and redo from scratch. And it was very stressful. We had a 1-year-old at the time. We had to move into an apartment for 3 months while we tried to finish the house. And we were like, never again. We are never doing that again. But then I was like, well, it'll be less stressful if we're not living there. It's not our house. We're doing it for another house and we're just going to sell it. So we bought this massive 7,000 square foot home in our city because I was looking at return on investment. Yeah, I don't start small. Massive house, huge undertaking. I mean, complete changing all of the structure. And so we took it on. Then I found out I was pregnant. I will say that it's 10% fun designing, picking colors, and it's 90% stress.
Sure.
Mostly because I had a partner, we had a financial partner in the deal, and so he had fronted the capital to go buy the house and do the renovations. It was like a $200,000 renovation budget, so it was a massive flip.
Yeah.
And I was the operating partner, so I was the one doing it all. And I was so stressed about his money being on the line and if I couldn't get a return on that investment. So I will say it was fun ish. It was a learning experience. I enjoy the before and after pictures a lot more than I enjoyed actually doing the flip. Um, I don't think I would do it again for the sole reason of steadily. My that is my hobby. We kind of joke in startup life, you have time for two hobbies. One is your family and the other is the startup. So it takes all of my extra energy and waking hours. So I wouldn't do it again at this point. But people are very successful at it, which is why we're in business because we provide the insurance for people who flip houses. So it was fun. It was beautiful. Um, I liked staging. I liked finding light fixtures and, high end finishes on Facebook Marketplace for a bargain. I love a bargain. And I think I was traumatized by the incident. So we sold that house for a very good profit back in November of 2020. So it's been over a year, and I'm just getting to the point where I'm ready to kind of start flipping, not flipping, but start doing projects again in my own house because for so long I was like, no, I will not do anything. But I will admit to, even in my own house, I am the queen of not finishing projects.
Sure.
So I will run out of steam when I'm painting and there will be just a tiny bit left, like the bottom of the door frame that I didn't finish painting. If you come into the front of my house, I have spindles, I have a staircase all the way up, and I've only painted about half of the spindles because I ran out of energy. And then I was pregnant and I had the startup and I was so tired. And so half of them are painted. So I finally reached out to a painter friend and I was like, there's no real project for you to bid on. Can I just pay you by the hour to come and I'll randomly point out things that I didn't finish painting and you can just finish. He's
Sure.
like, okay. So he's been coming for a few hours every weekend, and little by little, my own house is getting finished. So that was the flip. I don't recommend it for the faint of heart.
Sure.
Uh, dealing with contractors and all of that stress is a challenge. But for some people, especially if you can do a lot of the work yourself, it's very lucrative. So go for it.
If it is in your wheelhouse, yes, go for it. I'm always trying to convince my husband that we should do a flip, but neither one of us have any experience. So it's probably not in the cards for us, and that's probably for the best. But
I'm trying to convince Nathan to let us buy a rental. That's a big thing right now is,
sure.
buying a house, and especially like Airbnbs.
Yes.
And I love decorations. I could decorate it. It'd be really pretty. And he's like, no. I'm like, why? He's like, because I'm the one who would have to manage it. And I'm like, good point. You would. So, okay, no.
You're right.
Because I don't have time.
Sure.
So maybe someday, you never know.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. I appreciate all the wisdom you had to offer and just giving us a peek into how life is for you and your story. But before we wrap up, I have a question to ask you. I know that you've listened to the
Sure.
podcast before, so you may know already, but just give us your gut reaction, good, bad, funny, whatever comes to mind. But what is saving your life right now?
What is saving my life right now? I'm gonna I'm gonna say it's the treadmill that's right
Sure.
down here. I'm gonna say Nathan, number one, is saving my life right now. But apart from Nathan, I realized that I have no time to work out and I want to stay healthy. And so I'm like, okay, something's got to give. I don't want to give up any of the time I have with my kids because it's limited, and I really can't decrease my intensity at work. So how am I going to stay healthy? So I went on Facebook Marketplace and I bought like $100 treadmill. The fastest it goes is 2.5 miles an hour. And I just push it up against my desk, and I'm not doing it today because I didn't want the noise, but pretty much all day long while I'm on meetings, you can expect to find me walking on my treadmill. And so I have mastered talking and walking at 2.5 miles an hour. At the same time, I can hold a whole conversation. And the only thing you'll notice is, I'm kind of bouncing up and down, but I would say it is saving my life right now. It's the only way I get exercise at this point.
Perfect. Whatever works is great. For those of you who may have watched this on YouTube, you missed out on Datha walking during our interview. Let's happen. All right.
I mean, I can get on now.
Let's do it. Well, thank you so much again. We're honored to have you and just appreciate your time today.
Thank you. It was good talking to you, Ellery.